your 95% of the buyers, they're not ready yet. They're not ready yet.
Right.
But they are, as we just shared, people are doing research, or they're even making a list before they do extensive research on your company. They're going to find 3 companies and then do the research. So this framing maps directly how your CFO thinks about sales in terms of current and future cash flows. You need a forecast. Okay, what is the potential of this market? Say, for example, we're trying to tap into a new vertical, such as healthcare. We don't have to have all the answers, but we need to help forecast what the future may hold and how to approach that. Hello, fellow marketers, leaders, and listeners. Welcome to this episode of Call to Action. I'm Janet Mesh, CEO of Aimtal and the host of this show. And I'm joined here today with Tucker Delaney-Wynn. You've seen him around, you've heard his voice. So we're going to be digging in today to share and analyze the latest trends, tactics, hot takes in the B2B marketing industry. And just like all the other episodes, in this episode, we're going to conclude with one call to action. So we're going to cover a lot of information, but tune in till the end because we will share one thing that you and your team can incorporate into your marketing program this year, today, tomorrow, whenever you're ready for it, honestly. So let's just get into it, Tucker. We got a lot to cover. You and I just attended the B2B Marketing Forum. It's a marketing conference that's actually based here in Boston. So we observed a few different trends, common themes, topics, a lot of honestly what we talk about here on Call to Action, which was personally very validating. So there's a few things that we're going to cover across how marketing can better align and collaborate with departments. We talk a lot about collaboration with sales, but really what was coming up a lot is how do you best communicate and collaborate with finance, the importance of brand and thought leadership as a core focus of your marketing programs. And of course, no shock to everyone, there was a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, our dear friend AI, but in particularly around AEO, which is the trending acronym, Answer Engine Optimization. But what was exciting and what we'll dig into is just very much this theme around the focus of human creativity, critical thinking, and context, and why, we're the keepers of that, and we need to focus there. So yeah, let's do it, Tucker. Where do you want to start? Which topic should we kick off with first?
Yeah, I love it, Janet. Yeah, I think I'm excited to kind of get into that goal alignment, revenue focus, and financial metrics. I feel like we saw some awesome presentations on that and just been thinking about that a lot in general. And yeah, would love to dive into that.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think if you're listening to this, we're currently recording. It is just before Thanksgiving in 2025, and not gonna lie, it's been a bit of a rough year in 2025. It was kind of a slow start for a lot of companies at the beginning of this year. A lot of budgets were tightened or downright removed. I think that we see, and the overarching narrative and theme of at B2B Forum and just overall this year is marketing stuck playing defense. You're a hockey player, right, Tucker?
Sure was.
Were you defense or offense?
I started defense and then I switched to offense, which was quite appropriate.
I didn't even know this, people. You just cued me up so well.
Without
even planning for
it. But yeah, that's exactly it.
All right, so then you can identify with this that like marketing is stuck playing defense. We've been spending a lot of our time justifying the why, the value of marketing, how we're contributing to the growth of the company. And in one of the sessions, the speaker, she was explaining how marketing budget usually has like the largest variable budget. So one that you can like change and move around. So that's why it usually gets cut first. So I think a lot of us felt that going into this year that, ad budget is just so easy to just turn it off, but then they don't think of that kind of long-term impact. So really a lot of the time marketers and a lot of people were talking about this at the conference, and just what we hear, of course, directly talking to our clients, is that they're always justifying the value. So, what we saw was very much, we need to switch to the offense.
Right, so exactly.
Follow in Tucker's ice skates and being more proactive, strategic of like, how are we communicating, showing progress, showing momentum, and really like that impact and influence on the growth of the business. So curious kind of hear, I knew you attended a couple sessions too, Tucker, and just overall love to hear like kind of your take on how you're seeing like I find that when we talk about this, it's very feels just too ethereal. It's
Right.
like, okay,
Right.
cool, let me talk to finance, but what does that actually mean? How do we actually show that and demonstrate marketing's value?
Yeah. So, no, Janet, I think one of the big things that I've been thinking about is just that great marketers go beyond marketing. And by that, I mean they tie marketing back to business outcomes. So I think even at the B2B Forum, we saw this with a couple speakers, Katie Raudebush of Alpine Intel and Tish Millsap of Revenate, where they were really talking about the importance of communicating marketing's value to leadership, the board, to finance, as you were just saying. And if you can't do that, and this is something that Katie talked a lot about, you're really at risk of losing your budget and being seen as a cost center. And I think it can be natural for, marketers to be like, I don't know finance. I'm not a CFO. I don't have an MBA. I don't know how to do this. But Katie made this great point that's really stuck with me, which is if you're looking to engage your board or get your leadership or C-suite kind of on board with what marketing's doing, you really need to treat them the same way you would treat a target audience. Research them, develop messaging, come up with a strategy or a plan to engage them, and then frame everything that you're doing, that marketing is doing, in terms of the language and the things they care about. And when you're able to do that, I think you're able to really show marketing's value and drive wins for the company as a whole, which is much better than just, marketing over here doing their thing, but it doesn't really feel connected back to business goals and objectives. And Katie even kind of closed it with this great quote that I really liked, which was just, you want to educate your leadership so well that they can articulate what marketing's doing themselves to other people when you're not even in the room and be excited about it. So I really liked that framing of it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you have to have your own storytelling internally. I think that's seems to be an overlooked aspect of marketing programs. We are always outward facing, looking at the audience, which is of course the priority, but at the same time, we have to think of the internal marketing and communication and
Yeah.
how it's positioned, thinking almost as these counterparts or your boss even as one of your target audiences.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it might be helpful. We were just talking before the call started about getting into the real tactics and not just talking at a high level. So
Right.
I'd love to just kind of show how Aimtal does this and how we frame marketing around things that leaders who are not in marketing actually care about. We
Yeah.
looked at this kind of before, but what we're looking at here is a single slide, and there's a few things on here that I'll point out. We've got, and I'll say I should note this is a fake example, not a real example, but this is kind of a
But if
single
Microsoft wants to hit us up,
slide.
we are booking new clients for 2026. Come
Yeah,
on through.
filling up fast. There you go. Yeah. So what we've got here is a single slide showing marketing attribution. A fake example with Microsoft as a client, got the company logo, the Microsoft logo. I mean, you can imagine them as an active deal or a closed deal. Really important to include the deal size right below that as well, because if we're tying marketing to revenue, you got to show the revenue. Then we always like to show the actual contacts that are engaging. I think this might be the most important thing on the slide, the company logo, and then the actual contacts who are engaging. And then you can show channels and then listing out specific marketing engagements on a very granular level. You know, contact created after visiting the website, like LinkedIn posts 25 times, registered for 3 webinars, and then also showing the actual creative. So, which website pages did they go to? Which LinkedIn post did they actually engage with? And when you start to do these things, you're starting to show the actual touch points that nurtured the customer down the funnel. I think people say touch points a lot, but they don't actually list them out and write them out sometimes and then show that to leadership. So I think that's really key. You also want to draw specific connections between marketing engagement and sales activities. So, okay, they, liked 25 posts in the 6 months leading up to that deal closing, or the contact was created at this point. Things that the sales team are going to actually latch onto and think about themselves. And then, of course, marketing's doing all these creative, and the CFO isn't in the room every day with making creative decisions, but they might be wondering, why are we investing all this money on our website or on LinkedIn? So you want to really make clear how the creative that your team is putting out is actually tying back to revenue as well. So those are just a couple different ways that we like to make, I think, the connection from marketing and engagement back to revenue, back to pipeline really clear. And I know you
Right.
know this, Janet, but we've seen CEOs, we've seen, leadership teams really respond to these slides because it's pretty objective. It's really the facts, and it's a simple way to make that tie back to attribution and pipeline really clear.
Right. I like that point. It's the facts. This is the data is your friend in
Yes.
this in this case. And when you're
Yeah.
speaking and presenting to leadership, especially finance, and showing, show the numbers. They're
Yeah.
numbers people, speak the same
Yeah.
language, put it in but not putting it in the context necessarily of, you know, be say impressions is somewhat of a vanity metric, which is now
Mhm.
changing, but
Right.
I find that here, as you have, like 25 plus LinkedIn posts from company leaders,
Mhm.
included in seven in the month, like included in the month leading up to closing the deal.
Right.
So that in itself just proves the value of investing in social content
Yes.
and thought leadership programs, and how the buyer wants to be educated. They're looking around, they're researching you, your
Mhm.
company, the people who work there. We talked about this in a previous call to action episode about the hidden buyer. There are a lot of people, especially in B2B buying committees, that are responsible and make these decisions. And they may not be one of these contacts you have in your CRM, but they're signing on the dotted line.
Right.
That's a massive power, right? I love the way of framing it really in a very simple, bulleted, one slide, clear way.
Yep.
Find that if we can't distill it down into one page, one
Yeah.
slide,
Yeah.
then it's too much
Right.
we're not actually hitting the point.
You hit on so many good things there, but like to take that even further, I think one thing you said is the facts. And that's actually literally a CEO, when I showed this to him, once said, I like that you're showing me the facts. Like exactly that.
Right.
You're not
Nice.
adding all this flowery language, but you're showing the facts. It's pretty hard to argue with that. And people can all align on that. I also would add that I think it's really important to do this on an account by account level. I think sometimes HubSpot or other CRMs can kind of do a roll up where it's like this quarter marketing influenced 7 million in marketing influence revenue, but it's not showing you which accounts or where.
Mhm.
And that again gets a little too vague and broad. And I think that can be easy for leadership or sales or other folks to kind of squint at and be like, well, how, where,
Right.
with which accounts? But going by this account by account basis and getting it a little granular, I think actually is much more effective than having some big beefy number, but feels disconnected from the actual facts.
Right.
So,
What's also interesting about there was a lot of talk about account-based marketing this past week at the B2B Marketing Forum conference.
yeah.
And I think what we're saying is that you want to report on it as well, not just doing the marketing, but then closing the loop to report back
Yes.
on, okay, these are the exact what happened by account and how we contributed to closing the deal. Like it wasn't, and I think what I'm finding too, and the big change that's happening is that we there was so much pressure to create this one-to-one path from marketing to finance and like to prove revenue and like a direct contribution.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's just becoming increasingly difficult
Mhm.
with artificial intelligence and generative AI. And
Right.
then on the other hand, like people are not giving as much of their like data. They don't want to be tracked. There's like laws against doing it. So like there's literally you can get
Right.
sued. I'm actually a little excited that attribution is not hopefully not as much of a focus, but really what we're saying is you still need to prove the influence and impact and like the contribution of marketing to revenue and closing deals, or helping the sales team make it the conversations easier. And that
Right.
all, in my opinion, comes back to the brand, the thought leadership, the content that you're providing. Like
Yeah.
buyers are educated, they want to do the research. We talk about this so much. It
Yes.
should not be a surprise, but at the same time, even though we all know this, we don't form our marketing strategies or programs around this.
Mm, mhm. You're saying like people still undervalue and I think
Yes.
we're under prioritize brand.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right, exactly. And so you mentioned Tish Millsap of Revenue. She had a session that we attended, and it was all about speaking to the chief finance officer. So we're kind of regurgitating some of what she said, but also we see this a lot, and we shared it in previous call to action episodes. So as I mentioned, it was really validating because one of them in particular was that she was sharing some research from LinkedIn, and I think it's also actually, no, sorry. This is from Bain in Harvard Business Reviews first. So she shared this research. It's like a couple years. It's from 2022, I think, but I would say that's still fairly relevant, even though a lot changes, a lot stays the same with human behavior. So 80% of B2B buyers have a set of vendors in mind before they do any research. So that, but at the same time, I think that's where my point is that like your company product and services need to be visible within your market. I'm not saying you have to have like, the budget of Microsoft, of course not. However, if you have this really targeted content and information and you're answering questions that people are asking, then you're starting to show up for them when they start to look. And what was interesting from the same research is that 90% of them will choose a vendor from what they're calling the day one list. So that's like their short list that they have before they even kind of reach out to book a demo, for example. So it's like the book a demo or like the conversion on your website, once they even get there, like there's so much that happens before that. That's marketing. That is marketing.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I think both of these stats are super, super informative, especially that 80% one where they just have a list before they've done any research. We used to have we still have stats about how buyers do 3 to 4 months of research, but now it's like before they even do the research, they already have a list. I was thinking about too, there's all this stuff on signals. I feel like that's very popular right now and important of like, what are the buyer signals and where are we seeing intent signals from? But I think this also speaks to the fact that if you're waiting around until you find or hear intent signals, like you're already too late. Like they already have a list. And if they're already starting to do research, so just all the further to the point that the branding around people who aren't even thinking about doing buying yet is critical so that you're on their list when they do start to think about, oh, maybe I do need to start thinking about a new product here or something.
Right. And so in the same session, she shared this research. So I pulled it, I found the original source, and it's the B2B Institute, and it's like a think tank of LinkedIn. And this is really interesting. So what we're looking at is that current buyers in your market, around usually 5%, are ready to like buy. And then the 95% would be considered out of market. They're not ready to buy your service or product yet. So, but you could consider these are like 5% are your current buyers and 95% are your future buyers. And this is kind of wild because, but it makes so much sense when you hear and you see it. And her point, Tisha's point, which I really loved because it helps simplify the entire, like pretty much the entire use case and really the pitch for why you need to invest in brand is because your 95% of the buyers, they're not ready yet. They're not ready yet. Right. But they are, as we just shared, people are doing research or they're even making a list before they do extensive research on your company. They're going to find 3 companies and then do the research. So that's still where it's very much like focusing on these folks. And then in this LinkedIn, there's a LinkedIn article all about this 95-5 ratio, which we can share in the show notes. And what they said, like direct quote from the article, is this framing maps directly how your CFO thinks about sales in terms of current and future cash flows. So I was like, oh, obviously, because you need a forecast. Okay, what is the potential of this market? Say, for example, we're trying to tap into a new vertical, such as healthcare. Okay, what is the opportunity there? The chief financial officer and chief marketing officer need to determine that together of like, okay, this is what the 95% is in terms of revenue potential for our company. And it helps. I think that's a very good example that she shared. And then reading this article help, I think all marketers can start to think of it in this way as like, we don't have to have all the answers, but we need to help forecast what the future may hold and how to approach that.
Wow. You got my wheels churning, gears flowing, whatever it is. Yeah, but that's,
Flowing through all the funnels.
I mean, my God. So what I'm hearing is investing in brand is really an investment in future cash flow, it sounds like,
Right.
and I think that's
Right.
an amazing way, an amazing example of framing something in the language of finance, framing something in the language of leadership that the board not only like gets excited about, but actually feels bought into of like, yeah, we want to invest in future cash flow, of course. And I think
Right.
like connecting those two dots too of, okay, so 5% of your buyers are in market at any given time, 95% aren't. And I think obviously I don't know, that my takeaway there is we got to invest more on that 95%, but I can see folks being like, well, what about going really hard on that 5%? But from the previous stat we looked at, it's probably pretty likely that the 5% who are in market already have a short list of vendors. And if you're not on that list, you're really not in a good position. So I
Yeah,
think it reinforces the focus of
exactly.
branding to really get
Yeah,
in front of that 95%.
totally. And I think that has to be a pretty large aspect of how marketers are communicating internally and externally to show and prove like this is where we need to focus and it's not wasted money.
Yeah.
The budget's not going to be wasted on this. It all really compounds over time. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper because our next topic is around visibility and how do we discover, so okay, like cool, great guys, but like how do I even show up in the right places where my audience is and like in what ways? And as we mentioned, Tucker, we wanted to share some tactical approaches. So
Yes.
let's start. Like how do we best reach this 95% of a target market?
How indeed. And I think for me, this is where video enters the conversation. I think video has changed buyer behavior and we're never going back. So, a couple stats that have stood out to me. And by the way, this Charlie Ungashik of Vimeo had some great statistics around this, as did Lauren Creedon of Goldcast. But two stats right here that really, I think, set the tone and just are kind of a reality check on where we are in marketing right now. So 82% of all internet traffic is video, and 95% better retention rates for people remembering information when they watch a video versus read content. Alarm bells should be going off for any marketer listening or watching, saying, I need to prioritize video now, because clearly video is powering a lot of what's happening on the internet. And when people choose to watch something, they're remembering much more of it. They're going to remember much more about your brand, your message. So I think that's really important. And then I'd take this even a step further. And this is something that Lauren Creedon from Goldcast was talking about. When we think about AI, she said something really interesting. She said the underlying principle powering video is the same thing powering large language models, and that is language. Every video has a transcript. And so all these AI models, all these LLMs that are going and scouring the internet, they are absolutely picking up the words in the transcripts from videos and using that to feed their own learnings, but also pulling that up in AI search. So I think just another really key thing to think about is that like doing video is also what is going to help you rise up in AI search as well.
Right.
You want to get mind share, you got to start using video in multiple ways. Yeah.
Well, there's also, we're hitting this point where I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that the LLMs are almost running out of data.
Mm,
Like there's not even enough out there. So this is all the data that they need, like the language, the data, the information that they need to be fed to be
right.
able to prioritize and pretty much pick up and make your content visible.
Yeah.
So if you put it also in that context, it's it's really helpful to think because I feel like some people may think that they're really far behind, but actually, no, you're not. If you invest in creating this content, these videos
Right.
for the machines, then you have a higher chance of the humans finding it.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay. And so it kind of sounds like you're saying that almost contrary to what a lot of people might think, the LLMs are actually hungry for new original
Oh,
content.
absolutely. That's exactly what they need. And we talked about this in the last episode. It's like
Mhm.
AI slop. It's like it's almost just kind of going in a loop of the same content that already exists and pulling things that are now outdated when we need to give, and that's the power of humans, right? We can create things from, history or whatever. Like
Right,
that's our superpower is the
right.
creation of new ideas and information, and then we're the facilitator of giving that to the LLMs, like generative AI tools, to then help us turn it into, like, they're good at synthesizing and repurposing and speed,
Yeah,
but that's where like our original thoughts are needed.
100%. Thought being the operative word there. The other one
I
being
may have queued that
leadership.
one up. I'm not. I will say we'll break the fourth wall and share. You gotta cue Tucker up. Where do we go with all the thoughts, Tucker? How do we bring all these thoughts into a cohesive narrative?
How do we lead with those thoughts, one might say? Yeah. Indeed. So thought leadership, I think, is one of the big. It's where we're going. The need for human content, kind of human-centric content, which almost sounds like a robot wrote that phrase, but yeah, human-centric content that is kind of where people are sharing original insights, original research, original just perspectives and stories and opinions.
Right. Exactly.
Thought leadership is where that is happening. It's happening increasingly on LinkedIn, and it's happening increasingly with video. I think a lot of people know that already, but some kind of new insights and observations that I've been thinking about a lot is that this idea that thought leadership is really a team sport. And I'll actually just show a quick example of this. So here we have 9 different executives and employees from HubSpot, obviously one of the biggest leading technology companies in the world. But if you look at that, you've got Yamini, the CEO, you've got Dharmesh, but then you've got multiple other employees and leaders at the companies, all of whom have pretty sizable LinkedIn followings, and all of whom are posting regularly on LinkedIn, some with video, some with text, some with graphics. HubSpot has made a very concerted effort to really post and have multiple different leaders and perspectives on LinkedIn and share, different domain expertise. And so I think that's something that is really critical to know, that it's no longer about just that one employee who's really good on LinkedIn being your thought leader, but kind of creating a roster of different executives and employees who can be leaders at your company.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the team sport. If you
Mhm.
think it really is like a team, like in hockey, as we were talking at the beginning of this episode, you have different people on the team that you want to buy their jersey and rally
Yep.
around.
Yep.
You identify more with their way of thinking, but they all ladder up to this collective, values and overarching and like thought leadership content and narrative and product positioning and how they see and recommend others are approaching their industry. So
Exactly.
love it.
Yeah, and you've got a CTO here, a CEO, a
Right.
VP of product, you've got engineering, customer success, and so they're all posting their thoughts and their kind of strategic thinking about different areas of the business, but it all ties back to the company, even though they're posting their own perspective and they're posting from their own LinkedIn accounts. And I think that's just an important
Right.
thing to stipulate. All these thought leaders are posting from their own LinkedIn accounts. It's not all coming out of the HubSpot company feed,
Yeah.
because we know LinkedIn just prioritizes and rewards individual content even more than
We're
brand.
seeing that on our clients too. Like
Yep.
their thought leaders, like their people in their company, their channels and content's performing far better than the brand
Yeah,
content,
absolutely.
like the
And if you
company
start,
page content.
yeah, and that's even when you boost it as ads too. So,
I think we've talked about another episode, but if we haven't done a deep dive, we need to because
mhm.
it's pretty wild. We have the data on it. We can back all of this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess to that point though,
Mm.
just to round out this kind of priority theme that we're seeing, and very much think the focus is build out your thought leadership
Right.
content, what you're going to talk about, the people who are actually going to represent, like it's not just your CEO. Like no, it needs to be more folks. Build
Yep.
your team,
Yep.
identify those people internally.
Right.
But the missing piece, I think, is like what we were just talking about to connect the two, is that like how do we tie this thought leadership content and this investment in this, especially with video, to having an influence or impact on revenue.
Yes. And I think this honestly is something that a lot of people don't talk about, because there's all this talk about make sure marketing, connects to revenue. And then there's like, do thought leadership, do video. But I frankly don't see a lot of people talking about how you connect those two things. And
Right.
it's so important. So yeah, I would say if you're doing LinkedIn thought leadership, you have to have a strategy for connecting it back to revenue. Here's how we do it. You do an organic post on LinkedIn, and then you boost that post, and you can boost an individual LinkedIn account member's post from your company LinkedIn ads account. But here's really the key of when you boost an account. You don't just boost it on a random targeting ICP. You boost it against your target sales accounts, the accounts that your sales team is already actively pursuing and having conversations with. And then on a weekly basis, you want to report on the engagement at literally the individual level, like we were looking at earlier. Is the CTO from that company that your sales team is having meetings with, how are they commenting and liking? Who from each of your key accounts is commenting, liking, following? And document that and show that, literally the who, like we were just showing, show their profile picture, show their name and job title. If you can start to do that, and on a pretty recurring, maybe weekly, monthly basis, show that people from your target sales accounts are liking and commenting on the thought leader videos that you are posting, that's pretty serious impact on pipeline. I'd say that's an undeniable example of marketing and thought leadership shifting the needle on whether these sales prospects know, like, and trust you, which is pretty critical for whether they're going to buy from you or not. So yeah, when we talk about doing marketing that impacts revenue, I think that's what that looks like in terms of connect leadership to revenue.
And it is a bit manual. I think that's the other part that we need to say. LinkedIn is starting to open up more APIs. They came up with a company intelligence API recently. So we're going to start to dig into that and incorporate that into our services and testing. So we'll report back. But unfortunately, I think some of what we see as an agency is that this is a bit of a manual. What Tucker just described, you do need to go into, I mean, on the ad side, you can kind of pull it out, but at the same time, like seeing the comments and the likes, you need to layer in a bit of that in manual process to find that, bring that back into the report, which is fine. I mean, I think sometimes you just got to do it. And like, it's actually some of the most, as Tucker already described, when we show this to clients, they're like, it's like a light bulb. They're like, oh, wow. Okay. Like, yes, of course. Like, I'm so happy to see that, because like we've been trying to get in contact with them and we think that they're not interested, but it's like, no, they are interested. Actually, they're just not ready yet. They're in your 95%. So yeah, this is pretty, I think, we share a lot of ideas, but sometimes I remember at the B2B forum, I think Ann Hanley was talking in her keynote, but if I misquote, I apologize. But she was saying how we, like, marketers love efficiency and we kind of love the hacks, but there's just sometimes where you just need to like dig into it and approach it in the way to like pull out the right information. And it may be kind of manual and may take some time, but that's also okay, because once again, you're building this narrative, you're showing the data that's going to make it very clear internally that this is the right thing to invest in.
Completely agree. And I think I believe that no one's ever going to be able to 100% automate their way to greatness of connecting all the dots from marketing to revenue, entirely without human involvement. And even if they were, I still think there's a level of creativity and storytelling and human analysis that needs to happen to do the framing up to leadership. Like, AI is never going to be able to speak the exact way that your specific CFO or CEO needs to. You need to, as the creative person, be able to tell that story. So, and I think that's, luckily marketers are great at that. That's what we do, telling stories. So yeah, I think there's something great in that.
Well, thank you for leading into our next topic and priority we're seeing. And well, a lot of what folks were talking about, of course, is AI. And what very much like what we heard and talk about with folks is how AI needs to be that amplifier of human creativity. So that's what we were just saying. Like, we are the ones that have those original thoughts, the unique ideas. We understand the context. AI is getting pretty good at thinking, but it really bases off of what you give it. So, like the original kind of data and information and unique opinions needs to come from the human. So, I was excited that that was like a really big theme and just kind of across the board. Of course, everyone knows we need to use AI, but really seeing it as a tool to amplify
Mm,
how we as the humans are working and operating and making sure that we're, just kind of using it to our benefit as much as possible and not having it like replace our thinking. Like, it's not just it can do a good job. It's like kind of have it be like a thought partner, like a sparring partner. That's like the ways that I use it. I even tell it when it's wrong. I think that it's a very interesting, it's gonna be interesting to track this because there is, what Anne Hanley was talking about in her keynote of the B2B Forum conference, and just folks overall are talking about online, is that there's this like massive pull between the acceleration of AI and how the speed and how fast, like there's so much pressure on marketers to just like churn content out, churn programs, like breeze through stuff. And I see the problem with that. I see on the client side, like with our own clients, like you're moving too fast
yeah.
of the conversation with people. Like they don't have enough time to even, we don't even have enough time to process. Like everyone's just like churning out information and content just to say that they hit this quantity goal.
Right.
And we're all getting exhausted. Like the marketers are exhausted and your audience is also exhausted. Let's be
Right.
honest.
Right. And then after all that speed and volume, then it becomes an afterthought of like, oh crap, now I have to report and figure out all the things that we did and how they worked, as
Right.
opposed
And
to,
there's just so much then because then
yeah,
it's like, how do we actually determine that what
right,
actually worked?
right. Exactly. Exactly. So if there's so much speed and volume, I think what was nice and what we've kind of talked a little bit about, Janet, is the flip side of that, of slowing down a little bit and giving
Mhm.
ourselves time to think and reflect and be really intentional with our strategy. So that was something that I've always valued about Aimtal, and certainly something that I think Anne Hanley talked a lot about, that I really appreciated. And I think for me, especially before you get into using AI a lot, or just in the same way before you'd really get into execution, this actually ties back to something the CEO of HubSpot, Yamini, talked about a while back, was just before you get into all that stuff, starting with strategy. And I think starting at the human level and slowing down and thinking about what are we trying to do at the big picture, and how can I kind of
Mhm.
connect the dots before I even get started. I think that's really important as we're diving into marketing and using AI. But I'm curious to hear from you, Janet, how you are kind of thinking about this acceleration of AI, but kind of how you are thinking about approaching all of this, even as things feel like they're getting faster and faster.
Yeah, I would say that like for the human side, for us, the people, like our responsibilities for one, the critical thinking, like what's the logic behind what we're creating, what we're doing. So I think that comes a lot behind the business. Like marketing, if you have a product or service that's like not going to like just actually work in your target market, or it's just not a strong product, like there's only so much marketing can do. Like you need to have like a really strong foundation. And that's where that kind of like I would call it like critical thinking, the business logic, the like actual kind of data of like, is this a viable product service or positioning or audience that we want to like target? And then the next, like the second area I see is like, is this creativity aspect of it? I think this is very much where marketing can control that kind of the creativity, like the emotion, the like what it looks like, what it feels like, very much like the feeling of something. Like AI is only going to base it off of like what we're giving it. We can really make those decisions of like, this is what's going to resonate. And then the third area where I'm seeing is like what we're as humans, what we can control and where we need to focus is the context. Like this is the empathetic layer of it all. Like
Mhm.
generative AI doesn't have any empathy. Only, I mean, I find that it is probably the like most epic people pleaser though. Like they want to please us. Like when I'm chatting with Gemini or ChatGPT, they're just like, oh yes, exactly. And then they're like, no, that's actually wrong. They're like, oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. Like
You're absolutely right. I
you're
was
absolutely
completely
right. I was
wrong.
wrong. So I really see like, especially like context side, like this is, as you mentioned, Tucker, like this is the intent, the intention.
Yep.
And that's where we can identify like who, the what, the where. So I'm really seeing what kind of came up from recently and just an observation and working with like this technology really is that like it's not capable of like the level of empathetic ingenuity that's required to
Mhm.
actually make an impact, to change someone's mind, to convince them to make a decision. Like we're very emotional, irrational beings at the end of the day.
Mm.
Everyone pretty much there was a woman, her name was Tamsin Webster, and she had a session all about like messaging design, which was
Mm.
really good. Highly recommend following her. And she was talking all about this, like how people make decisions and then they rationalize why they made the decision. But the decision in the first place is emotional. So I see that, we can be that bridge between what technology can do, which is like synthesize information
Mm.
that we give it, do it at like a massive speed, like insane speed. Like it's pretty remarkable and repurpose content, kind of help you spar on that.
Right.
And then, but then we need to help translate that into like what us people can actually understand and what's really going to resonate
Right.
and
Right.
be relevant, in that contextual time. Like
Mhm.
there's so many examples. Like, we should just do a whole episode of examples of this, but like you need to make sure that commercial you're creating or the ad or the blog article, whatever it is, the brand campaign is actually going to make sense within the context of when you share it. An example of that would be, do you remember that like Pepsi ad with one
Yeah.
of the Jenner
Oh yeah.
girls?
That's what I
And
was just thinking of before you even said
yeah,
that.
like
Yeah.
that's like a really good example of like there was emotion to it, but that ad was like showing them at I think it was like a
Protest.
protest.
And yeah.
And just when they released it, it was just not the right time at all. It was
No,
really
no, no,
bad.
no. Yeah.
So there's just things like that where we the human need to think through that. Like AI is not keeping up with all these like daily changes of what's happening in our worlds. We're
Right.
responsible for informing them and then bringing that back in.
Totally. Completely agree, and I really like that framing of we are irrational beings, so the idea of relying entirely on a, rational machine to feed us our marketing, and I don't
Right,
is makes sense. Um,
right.
but yeah, critical thinking, creativity, and context. I love that, and kind of anchoring the humans in those things, and then using AI strategically around that, I think makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so the last topic I want to talk about is kind of just to like expand off of this, like a little bit more tactical now of
Mm.
in the context of AI and AEO, which stands for Answer Engine Optimization. This is like everyone's talking about this. Everyone does not know what to do. I will say, Aimtal, we do know a bit of what to do. We're doing this for clients, and we're don't know everything, but we're figuring it out and seeing a lot of success with it. We did it for Aimtal. We're doing it for clients. So I wanted to speak to some of that actually because in a previous episode, we did talk about the more technical, kind of foundational side of like your website's infrastructure and all that good stuff. But we haven't talked about like kind of what the overarching like through line of this episode is around that content, the thought leadership, like what are you actually like standing for as a company? What are you actually like saying to your audience and not just the brand but the team, the roster of thought leaders? what
Right.
are what are you what unique ideas and information are you sharing with the world? So I'd love to kind of spend a little time on that, Tucker.
And I totally agree because you can't like here we are being like thought leaders go have like 5 thought leaders start posting, but it's like whoa.
Like what are they going to talk
About
about?
what? Yeah, like what are they
Yeah,
saying? What are their values? So I think in the
yeah,
spirit of slowing down and zooming out, Janet, yeah, take us through kind of how you think about that and how we at Aimtel
yeah.
kind of think about that
So
approach.
what I'm excited about the most about all this is that like if you have a background in content and SEO, like this is our moment. Like let's go. We've been saying this for
Yeah,
years. It's like truly the time
yeah.
to bring back, and not even bring back, but actually do it properly, the hub and spoke strategy, where
Mm,
you're building authority around specific topic areas that relate to your company, your product, services, just overall, like your overall like IP as an organization. So very much this is like the hub and spoke strategy. It's been around for a long time, but I see that as like a bit of like the past 5 years where like there was a lot of investment in organic and like the whole concept of like inbound marketing.
Mhm.
And then so everyone really overinvested in that. And now it started to change. So everyone was like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I'm not getting any traffic. So I'm just going
Right.
to do a ton of performance marketing and a ton of
Right.
ads. And
Right.
now what's happening is it's almost like not going back, it's shifting in the fact that we, as we just said, and people know, you need to give a lot of the data and information to the LLMs to be able to cite you and answer people's questions. Like it is true that folks are like, people are going onto Google, they have the AI overview, get the answer right away. You're not getting the traffic driven to your website, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. Or
Right.
even it pulls other sources though. That's what's cool about it. It's not just about your website. Like you can put this information across channels. Like LinkedIn is a good example. Reddit's another example. There's a range of tactics that make sense
YouTube,
for your audience. YouTube, exactly. Thank you.
yeah.
So this is a very helpful, clear way to categorize and start to think about, okay, what are these like topics that
Mm.
we want to be known for to build authority and connection to our product or service?
Mhm.
And you really structure this around like they call it like a hub. So as you can see, there's 4 on here. You can call it whatever you want. Like one would be for us like video marketing. That's a hub. Another one is just marketing strategy. That would be a hub for Aimtal.
Right.
If you're a client, that's, for example, I can give another one, like they want a hub around AI agents because they're creating agentic products. Like that would be a hub.
Yep.
But you have to do the research to identify what are those kind of like niche spokes or keywords. There's a lot of like pushback on like using the word keyword, but right now the data is like only shows things like if you go into SEMrush, for example, or Ahrefs, like it's showing you the keyword, but it
Mhm.
also shows the questions now. So you really need to frame. So you identify and build out the topic hubs, and by each hub, identify around 3 to 5 keywords or questions
Right.
that people are looking for, like they're searching for. And then you take that information, you literally are getting it, and then you create your content around answering these questions
Mm.
and or having it pretty much solving the problems that people are looking for at the end of the day. So I can kind of show this. I actually anonymize this with the next slides I have here. This is another way to like represent the data. So once you identify those questions, keywords in a SEO tool, you can pull in like global search volume ranking. As you can see here, some of this is like really high, like 20,000. I blocked out the side, but this is like literally what Aimtal created for a client. So to show from their hubs, like from the keywords that we're recommending, which ones that they should go, like we should in questions, which ones we should target. We recommend going between like 2,500 to like 10,000 range. So kind of this little sweet spot area in the middle of the chart. There's a lot of opportunity there. So, and then in addition to that, you can kind of look at the data around like keyword difficulty, like how difficult would it be for us to be cited for this information? Anything over a 50 will be, or actually I would say like a 60 at this rate because there's just so much content in the world. You really want to kind of have like a 50% or below. In SEMrush it goes up to 100. So there you go. That's the range there. So from this you can kind of start to identify and like start to like look. I like literally just like Google things myself. Like I just take the human approach and like search for the keywords, see what comes up, what comes back, and then pull the data in. But I think a big part of it, the other area to look at, which is really interesting, is like for this client in particular, we looked at the intent of the keywords or questions. And this just like proves the point that we were just making in the episode, is that so the green here, the 80% of the intent of the content that people are like pretty much what they're looking for is like informational. They're looking for information.
Okay.
Only
As opposed to,
7%.
like, I want to go buy something or something.
7% was commercial.
Wow.
So the people and like this client, like I mentioned, they're in like the agentic AI space. They just want to learn. They're like, how do I do this? What is this? They're not ready to make it like a purchase yet. That's like the point of this is that this is the opportunity for your brand, for your team of thought leaders to share and be known to provide that information, answer the questions, make sure you're showing up and providing that level of like value. But you can't expect them to come to your party on your website.
Yeah, I mean, makes total sense. I guess I wanted to ask a clarifying question. So when we look back at like the hub and spoke model that you were showing, my sense, Janet, is that I feel like back in the olden days, like 10 years ago, people would use this mostly for a blog strategy. But my sense is what you're talking about is this wouldn't just be for blog. This would be for
Yes,
multiple
exactly. So
different kind
this
of
would be for your multi-channel program.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yes.
people, not just the brand, but also you can use this exactly for so that you kind of have at the brand level,
Right.
but then your thought leaders can also align to these topic hubs, keywords,
Mm.
questions, align to like what their expertise is.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can hit it on different channels. So not sure, absolutely. You need blog content on your website. You need to make sure it's like up to date. You're coming up with a lot of that relevant information, but also putting into video onto
Right.
YouTube, putting it into LinkedIn, Reddit, answering questions there, like taking that very much like, I mean, we've shared it before, like use SparkToro to identify where your audience, which top channels they're on. Like the data is available. Like
Right.
you just got to go look for it and
Yeah.
then bring that back in to show, okay, this is kind of the high level of what we want to be known for and have authority around of these conversations, and this is like where, and this is, and then you already talked about the who, like this is who's going to talk about it.
Wow. Okay. So if I'm a marketer right now, I could be thinking about creating a hub and spoke model with several key topics and then
Mhm.
keywords associated with each hub. But then maybe we combine that with our kind of team sport where we associate a thought leader with each hub who's talking about maybe each topic, and then they've got specific subjects to talk about. That
Yeah, so you could almost like, I guess the next step is like building the little additional spokes. I don't know what they could be called, but like pretty much like the channel distribution, like the distribution would be the next layer from this.
right. Ooh, love that. Okay. Feel like we got a pretty
Yeah.
good winning strategy right there.
Yeah, I think we'll have to share in 2026
Yeah.
next upcoming episodes of like how this is show some data behind the theory, I guess, because we were theoretical, but this is a way that I found we like I'm showing the exact charts that we
Yes.
created and the data and we presented forward. It's like take that, like
Right.
go take this like template and then put it into your own deck and show it that way. Like it's a very easy way to like understand the kind of through line and how it
Go
all
use
connects.
it, go do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I think one other aspect that I know we talk a lot about, Jana, just with AEO is the kind of technical side, the more foundational infrastructure side. And I know you've been doing a lot of work on this yourself for both Aimtal and clients. And I think that's just a really key component as well that we don't want to be forgotten, is that you can do all these things on the content side, but there are also technical structural things that companies need to do on their websites to kind of adapt to the way that AI and LLMs kind of scrape information off your website or pull information. And so in order to really increase the likelihood that your site is sourced and surfaced in AI search results, there's kind of a seismic shift where there are some technical updates that folks really need to do. And I can share that this happened to us this morning. Yet we've made some updates on our website, and there's been a pretty significant increase in form fills from people who are coming through the channel of AI search, which has been
Yep.
amazing, but also just very not even validating, but like, okay, if you want to get people to come, you need to do some technical things so that people find you
Right.
through AI. Is there anything you would want to share, Jenna, just about the technical side? Because I know you've been in the weeds of
Yeah.
helping clients make this
Yeah,
happen.
I talked about it on the last episode of Call to Action. We can
Mhm.
link it in the show notes. And I will also say, like, definitely not even just listening to me, but go check out Webflow. They're doing a lot of really good work around this,
Yeah.
like more technical side.
Yes.
So, but just like three things that stand out and we know really matter are one, your website sitemap,
Mm.
like in the hierarchy of the pages.
Mm.
So you should also think of this like hub and spoke as also the hierarchy of your website pages, not just your content. So how is everything linking to one another like the backlinking, interlinking is still really important around URL hygiene is really important. So also having that kind of in the URL slugs, it's represented of how. So for example, I'll give you an example. You have your website homepage, which links to your services page, which needs to then like have it mapped to the specific, say you have a range of services. So you want to have that like clear breadcrumb and hierarchy of how those pages are all laddering up to the services or your product features. And there's a difference of that versus the, for example, like resources page that may not have as high up. You can set priority level on your sitemap as well. So you want to you're pretty much just giving instructions to the LM to follow to understand how it's all categorized. And then the other area, which shouldn't be too surprising, I think a lot of people hear it now, but just as a reminder, is like adding schema to your website. So schema data, it's actually created by Google, Yahoo, a bunch of tech companies. It's like a public accessible schema markup. Like you can just literally go Google schema.org and it's there. And so you want to add schema to all of your pages. And that's what we did. And it did help. And then that also helps make the connection between like pages. You can tell it like this one's similar to this one, but it's different in these ways.
Okay.
So, and that's where you also like feed in the keywords. I don't think the keywords are necessarily that important, but on the schema, but it helps just make it very clear of how everything connects.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like taking notes. I mean, I like know this stuff, but you got me hook, line,
Yeah,
and
I'm like,
sinker. Yeah.
He's just asking the questions to cue me up.
I love it. Sitemap, URL hygiene, and schema.
Yeah,
Those are
there's more. There's obviously more, but I would say like those are the three things to
Those
look
are 3%.
at going into 2020. Like that is like investment of like foundational work. And what I was saying before is like a lot of companies have focused on promotion, amplification, distribution, which sure is important, but if your foundation isn't strong, AI is just amplifying that. Like it's just showing all the cracks in the foundation.
Yeah, it'd be a real bummer to invest a ton of time, energy, money, resources into just the content and not make some foundational updates that are actually going to surface this content in the ways that AI is pulling. So.
Right. It's as if you were going to go remodel your kitchen and they told you they had to tear down the house and build it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
you don't want to do that. Like prevent that.
With the hockey metaphor, you work on your shot a bunch of times and then you're playing with a broken stick or something. So
yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, we covered a lot, Tucker. Another full hour of call to action. Yep. So thank you if you've listened this long. We appreciate you and hope we shared some nuggets of wisdom, some trends, hot takes, all the things so that you can, try something in your own company, just one thing, pitch it, try to even just report on it, whatever that looks like. So as I said, we'll round out with one call to action to our audience. Do you want to kick us off, Tucker? What's your one? If there's one thing for folks listening to do, what should it be?
Let's see. Maybe, I'm kind of doing a curveball. I might give folks a call to action that I kind of gave myself, which is I last week recorded a video and I posted on LinkedIn. And now, of course, I'm looking for the name of it. Downloading an app of just, I think mine was called CapCut of just download an app and try recording a video and adding some branded subtitles in. It's really easy. AI makes it really easy. And I think as marketers, we need to become fluent and comfortable in both, doing video, but also understanding a little bit of the mechanisms behind it. It's a lot easier than you think. And once you start doing it, even if that's not your bag all the time, I think it's something that will help you coach others and give it a shot. What about you, Janet?
What's your Tiger's been crushing the LinkedIn video game. I'll say mine would be do the research, like take time to go back in the data. You can go look at your Google Search Console keywords, see what was coming up, what was coming to your, how people were discovering your brand. Go look into, if you have a SEMrush tool or equivalent like Ahrefs, whatever, they're not that different, I don't think. So, whatever you have access to, SparkToro is also great. But go look around these tools, go look at your own website, your own data, do the research, and then use that to build your topic hubs and keyword spokes. Build that out because that's going to be the foundation of your company, the brands, thought leadership content, the people, becomes, it becomes a lot of different things that can pretty much be what drives your overall strategy for now into the next year.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to hear from you, our viewers, listeners. What do you think? What's going to be your top priority for 2026? We are now recording this episode in November 2025. So we're very much kind of in this reflection, look ahead mode right now. Yes, we'd love to hear, what have you been trying? Are you seeing that thought leadership is working for your company? Something else? Have you been trying to optimize your website or just don't even know where to start? Let us know. We'd love to help talk further about it. So let us know in the comments. You can hit us up on LinkedIn. Definitely be sure to subscribe not to miss an upcoming episode. Until next time, thanks everyone.